So
Holy
great,
hell.
fantastic, amazing,
Holy
fantastic,
hell.
fantastic. And
I'm just gonna submit that in my next job application. I'm gonna just send them this podcast and just say this. Use this.
welcome back to Barely Scraping By. This is the camera right here.
All
This is the camera right
right.
here. You don't have to look at it, but I'm talking to it because I'm here. Welcome back to Barely Scraping By. We have a special, sweet, gentle mommy baby guest today. Kelly. Sweet Kelly. Sweet, gentle Kelly. Anyways, I want to tell you a little about Kelly, why I had her on today and why I asked her and why she's been a part of my life and turning into a good friend. You're coming into the inner orbit, my friend. But Kelly came into the office last year when I was in the Unscripted department, and she looked fire flames in her little blazer moment. She came from New York and she came out of a cannon. She was just like fast and she talked fast and she was high energy and she just had a great personality and she was looking stylish and she smelled good. And I'm like, who
Shit.
are you? Who are you?
Say
Turns
that
out
back one more time.
she's straight, sadly, guys. So don't, if you're a man, she's yours.
now.
If she's a woman, she ain't. But I walked in and I was like, I need to befriend this woman. And she was like, I might be moving to LA. And I said, oh my God. Cut to Kelly's in LA, and Kelly has not just been a coworker, but a good friend of mine. And I find that she helps me through a lot of things. I called you the other day, and I've a through line through this season is that I'm a little bit of a barely scraping by funk. And I was chatting to Kelly as I was walking the other day to the beach. And I was like, I'm feeling like a little funk. And you got me out of it. And Kelly just kind of like sees the way I exist and she notices things and you remember things. You remember what I say. You remember how it makes me feel. You remember I'm like what the state I'm in now. Like she just remembers and cares a lot about her friends, but also is an insane person at work and really gets shit done. So she's not just a great personality, but like just a great person to have in the office and just a fantastic person to have in your life. So
Holy
great,
hell.
fantastic, amazing,
Holy
fantastic,
hell.
fantastic. And
I'm just gonna submit that in my next job application. I'm gonna just send them this podcast and just say this. Use this.
hey, you lacking something? Use this. But that's why I wanted to have Kelly on and very intentional about it, having you here, because I look up to you in a lot of ways. I lean on you for a friendship and at work. So we have Kelly on the pod, my friends.
It's an honor to be here. Truly an honor.
Have you, my
Truly
friend.
an honor. Season two. Season two. We got a new backdrop. We're in Santa Monica. I'm literally 10 minutes away from you.
Before we get into the nitty gritty questions, my friend, I want to kind of itch the surface about, what brought you to LA, what brought you to the industry, and what brought you in front of me.
Jeez, where do I start? What brought me to the industry? I mean, I always started out in theater, which is kind of why I always knew I was just like, if I wasn't entertaining someone, I wanted to be behind someone who was, and just like making people laugh or working for people that make people laugh, I think is like such an underrated career. It helps people in so many ways. So I was like in all the school musicals, went to a very small school. So grew up in a small town called Shelter Island. No one's ever heard of it. A lot of people say, I love that movie. It's not Shutter Island. It's much nicer, not as scary, but there's about 2,000 people there, so super small. And then I got the fuck out of there against my mother's wishes. She didn't want me to leave the tri-state area, but I said I had to. And that application was free. So I applied, got in, and it was going to cost what a state school was. And so I said, Mom, you don't really have a choice. I'm going to Tulane. And yeah, I went down to Tulane. Not really for their film or TV program, but honestly, to have a good time. The good of America is brought out in like places like New Orleans. So had a great time there, graduated in 2020, which was the worst year ever to graduate, I think probably in history, one of them. And so this is actually, I don't know if you know this actually. My first job ever, also before all of this, I worked in like 6 different restaurants and nannied a ton. So I had been in the workforce a bunch, but my first corporate job besides internships was being a COVID contact tracer. So if y'all remember when COVID first came out, if you got COVID, you usually got a call from the Department of Health being like, hey, you have COVID. And so we have to get all your contacts and we're going to call them and we're going to tell them that they have to quarantine for 14 days, but we're not going to tell them who gave it to them because that's again just HIPAA. So I had to cold call Nassau County, which if you don't know Long Island, Republicans, bunch of Republicans, and be like, hey, so you've been in contact with COVID. You can't leave your house for 14 days. If you do, you will get in big trouble. And we're going to be tracking you. And we're calling you every day to make sure your symptoms are okay. Oh my God. That is the hardest job I probably will ever have, because the way I was spoken to by these people was nothing short of disturbing. Then I got the hell out of there, and I actually started working for a small production company that specializes in like real estate videos, drone stuff, just like premium like house showcasing and marketing essentially. That was just something that came about from meeting someone on Shelter Island. And then I was in that for like a year and a half, was definitely growing and, making good money and advancing in the company. There was a really small company. And I just realized like, okay, I'm using my production skills, I'm using my marketing skills, but like, I am not in entertainment. Like, this is not where I want to be. Like, where are the headsets? Like, it just didn't feel like, Hollywood, even though it was in New York. So I took a big step back and I applied on entertainmentcareers.net to an agency job.
There we go.
Little plug.
That feels like a curse hearing that right now.
That sounds like a title sponsor waiting to happen. So anyway, I applied for a job and I looked up the company. This is the honest truth. I looked up the website and it's called A3 Artist Agency at the time. And their New York office was in the Empire State Building. And I was like, hell yeah, brother. Like, I want to
Kelly. We're locking the hell in.
I want to work in the Empire State Building. Like, come on, even if it was just for a year. So I applied, and there was someone from Tulane who I found on LinkedIn and worked there. My friend Ian Joslo. Yes. And so agent. He recommended me, and I interviewed with Mark Turner, who was like the head of the Unscripted department, and was on Zoom. Very weird to interview for things on Zoom. And I asked who his biggest clients were, and all I remember him, which I like probably shouldn't have asked, but we were very casual even from the jump. He said Reggie Bush, who is like one of my all-time crushes, and I was like, oh, I'm in. Perfect. This is great. I work in the Empire State Building, and I might get to meet Reggie Bush. I'll get back in entertainment, but I'm going to take a 50% pay cut. 50% pay cut. So I was going from making decent money at that age, probably too much than I should have been making, to making, whatever it was, 40 grand a year. So yeah, just started working there, worked on a couple different desks, made a ton of great friends. And we got eventually acquired, which is what led me to meet you. That was last January. I basically just was on 2 desks and then got promoted to be coordinator, after that, like a year ago.
And then that brought us here.
But before
we get into the nitty gritty, I have a little fun little moment called the baddie boots.
Ooh,
this baddie little boot right here is full of some baddie little questions.
Okay.
And I kind of want you to pick a little question from the boot and read it out loud, mommy, and then answer. And then onward we go. So reach your hand on that little baddie boot.
Oh, there's so many.
Girl, I did my work. Don't worry.
Your work. Okay.
She's contemplating.
What is the worst thing you have ever heard someone say in the office?
You don't have to say which office. You don't have to say which office.
I'm not going to say who. But I was in an elevator with an assistant, and we were joking around. We have a good relationship with this agent, just a bunch of assistants and this agent.
Oh, shit. I remember this. I remember this.
And
I happened to be in that elevator too.
You happened to be there. That agent made it, a little jab, a little joke, and an assistant, very, very lighthearted. And the assistant, in so many words, called him a little bitch. That was one of the best days of my life.
Tip my hat to whoever did that.
Whoever did that, reshaping this industry. I will say that assistant later apologized. All is well. It was just an emotional response, but that was probably That's not the worst vulgar thing, but that was just like an iconic moment that comes to mind.
And I know this assistant personally, and this assistant is still apologizing to this day for that mistake because this assistant is just a silly, goofy, pretty,
Just
gorgeous, amazing,
means so
hardworking.
well.
That is crazy. I
Yep.
can't believe they did that.
Cannot believe. It was iconic. I went,
I want to get into like when you acquired, like when it was acquired by the bigger agency that we both work at now, how you're navigating, you know, this department, these moments, and I can kind of get into like the promotion and all those things. But I want to kind of know what you're up to now and like how that all led, like the lead up to where you are.
yeah, I mean, since I started, we are in I'm in the unscripted alternative department, which has quickly kind of become what I call the et cetera department, because if you can make money from it, it's something that we're interested in. Obviously, we work with touring and podcasting and all sorts of other verticals, but yeah, it's kind of it's a privilege that our department lets us be creative in our revenue streams. It's not just, you know, repping talent, repping producers, repping production companies. We're now repping brands, and that's a whole conversation to be had, just where like the industry is changing. But yeah, since I when I started, things were very traditional. I mean, this was between COVID and the strike. Things were booming. Like reality was booming, showrunner deals were closing, like things were really flowing. And I was just imagining I was going to sign talent, I was going to sign producers and production companies. Like those were the three buckets that I was going to sign. I was particularly interested in the production company aspect because I went to school for TV and film. So that has all really changed with the strikes and with consolidation, and everyone's trying to find their identity in a way that has been described to me by higher ups as this is not how it has ever been, to use their words. And that's, you know, agents I've spoken to who are in their 50s. You know, they've seen all sorts of changes, but they said this current moment, at least in unscripted, is so different because it's really changing in a good and bad way. The good way is that you're seeing things like Love Island, all these big shows. Celebrities are obsessed with reality TV now. Like, you know, reality has really leveled up in that way. But in leveling up and in becoming more premium, there are fewer shows being made. So there's less business to be had. Everyone wants to take bigger swings on fewer projects. That's what everyone always says. Everyone's looking for their traders. And so in all of that mess, it's kind of like me trying to figure out, A, can I be an agent? Can I make how am I going to make money? How am I going to build like my book of business? And to be honest, I still couldn't tell you what exactly that will look like. I'm on a brand team for a coffee brand. So we're working with a coffee brand to help with their celebrity sponsorships and maybe doing a flavored item menu with one of our talent, and all sorts of stuff. So it's really changed in such a way where I'm still currently trying to figure out where I fit in, and where I see my success. Since becoming a coordinator, the onus is on us to really step up and drive immediate revenue. And then the question is like, how do you do that? The two buckets are really, you know, retainer brand clients that are like on retainer, so that you're guaranteed the money. As agents, we work so much to make maybe $0, but when you have a brand on retainer, they pay you at the first of the month. You are now going to work the whole month, and that they pay you before you work. And that's a different model than the agency has been. And so that's something that I've had to wrap my head around. And the other realm that can make you fast money is digital, is influencers. People could do crossover. And so yeah, I guess I've had to reshape my thinking because I'm not really into the influencer space, and I've had to get over that, and I've had to look and find out what influencers aren't just promoting, you know, beauty products. Like maybe it's comedians, whatever it might be. I think it's just been reshaping the way I imagine my book of business, which, to be honest, like I think it's really hard. Like I think it's still really, really hard for young agents to make immediate money. And that's just something that pressure of making immediate money that timeline has been shortened and shortened and shortened. And usually you're given 1 year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years before you become profitable, where they expect that revenue. And now it's like, we need the revenue before we even promote you. So it's a tricky position because you're kind of you have to act like an agent before you're even promoted. That's how every promotion kind of goes, in the world, right? It's like a joke. It's like, I got promoted for the job I was doing for 6 months.
Wow. No, that's like, oh, wow. I feel like I'm thrown back into the unscripted world because that's what I started. Like I was just like fully like getting lost in it. Like I was an assistant again, but like other
Exactly.
departments kind of run at a very like specific
A lot of red
speed,
tape.
a lot of red tape, but kind of being an unscripted coordinator, you were 25 when you like got that promotion, which is like crazy in this current environment and just in entertainment. How do you command respect and maintain control?
Ooh, command, respect, and maintain control. Well, coordinators are in an interesting position because your boss is your department head. You're no longer working for an agent, and you're also working for all the agents, and you're also kind of mentoring and shepherding and managing all the assistants. So you're kind of like this perfect balance. You're like the liaison of the whole department. And so you have to know everything but that's going on with the assistants and everything that's going on with the agents all at once. And like department heads, they're so high up that honestly, like the coordinators know more about the department probably than anybody because we're just in the thick of it all. In that regard, though, it's a really difficult jump because when you're working for an agent, you're rolling calls, you're scheduling Zooms, you're doing submissions, you're sending tapes, you're working for one person. They're telling you what to do. When you become a coordinator, you have some responsibilities, but you have to carve out your schedule and carve out what's going to make you money and what's going to make the department money. That's an asterisk. You're not making any of the bonus, you're not getting a bonus, but you're can bring in and source deals. And so it's this balance of being commanding respect and acting like an agent, but not going too far to annoy them, right? Like you can't step on people's toes and be too cocky because then agents won't like you. And once you cross that line, they will make up their mind immediately about you and they will shut you out and they won't want to collaborate with you because they'll think you're cocky and you're younger and what do you know and all of that. And if you're too cocky with the assistants, they'll never respect you. They'll never tell you anything. They'll never, if you're not approachable, what good is that as a coordinator? And so it's this dance of being kind of like the therapist of the whole group in a way, because you're trying to make everyone happy, but you're also trying to hustle to get promoted. So you have to be a bit of a shark. Like you have to be a bit aggressive. And that just goes down to simple things in terms of commanding respect, which I joke about in the office, but it's something I do. It's the way you speak. It's the way you write emails to start. It's like, instead of saying, "So sorry for the delay," appreciate your patience. Instead of saying, "I think that," you say, "This is how I see it." Things like that. We don't realize how when we tee ourselves up in meetings and tee ourselves up on emails, how we're perceived. If you say "I think" or you sound wishy-washy, especially as a female, or like in this industry, you kind of have to fight to gain respect, verbally and over communication first. I think that's like a big way that I've kind of felt like I was treated as equal. And so instead of saying, "Oh, like if you're teeing up a talent in a meeting, saying, 'Oh, so I kind of came up with this idea, and I think it might be a good idea to rep Action Bronson," that's not going to go over well. Instead, you say, "Action Bronson would be an amazing sign. This is how I see him succeeding in our company." And it's just the way you phrase things can really go a long way. Yeah, it's a balance, I'd say, but it's yeah, it's balance. It's really it.
But how do you leverage, ooh, Claire, okay. How do you leverage your natural warmth strategically without people taking advantage of your kindness?
It's something I struggle with. I mean, I'd say the way you balance it is by sticking up for yourself in subtle ways when you feel taken advantage of. And I'm a very confrontational person, almost to a fault. But if you really just casually go, if someone did something that you feel like crossed the line or whatever it may be, you literally, it's as simple as being like, let's go for a walk, let's go get a coffee, and just be like, I know I'm a big jokester, I know I'm all jokes, and I know I'm the happy, warm, whatever, but like that kind of bugged me, and like I just want to tell you that, like I just want you to know that kind of bugged me, or that kind of, I didn't really love that, so I just want to be honest about that. And when a silly or warm person draws their line in the sand, it hits much harder because people get, just like when Claire gets mad, it is terrifying because it's just it's the yin and the yang, and it's just it scares me in my boots.
But who shaped your understanding of how to navigate this industry, and what non-obvious lessons did they teach you?
Whoa.
I'm taking her out question by question. Bang, 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 bang.
Well, I like to think a little bit.
No, take a second.
I mean, the most obvious is Jared Thompson.
Can we take
I
a
gotta
moment?
give a shout out. Yeah, I feel like obviously I by the time I got on Jared, who is an agent in my department's desk, I was pretty confident and established, and I felt like I knew what I was doing. But he is undoubtedly the most perfect boss and colleague I could describe. I'll tell you why. Jared established a relationship with me that was so comfortable and normal, jokey, and sometimes like, maybe not so like something we wouldn't say in a meeting, but never ever ever made me feel unsafe, never ever ever made me feel like I wasn't valued, always was behind whatever I was saying. And treated me like a human being that was his age. And the first thing he did, which I noticed immediately, was when we were on calls, he'd ask me to join every call, and he would say, "This is Kelly. Kelly's on my team. Kelly's on my team. This isn't my office, my assistant, not even my associate. Like, this is Kelly. Kelly's on my team. We work closely together." And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, we do. Yeah, we do." And I was like, that's my boy right there. It was those little things that he did without waiting for a pat on the back either, of just building you up and making me feel like I knew exactly what I was doing when I had no idea what I was doing. And everything he does in business is something that I have worked to emulate. And it's responding to emails quickly, or at least confirming receipt, saying, I'm going to get back to you on this. He's always responsive. He never ignores an email or a phone call or a text, but then taking a beat to be thoughtful about the response and really not rushing it, and really, really, really thinking about his whole ecosystem of resources. He's such a connector that people just tell him shit. People just come to him for stuff because it's Jared. First of all, he's going to be helpful, he's intelligent, and he's, a hustler, but also he's likable.
We can go on and
We
on
could
about
go on and on.
Jared.
We could
I
have a
hope you know
whole
this whole
episode.
episode can be about you. But before we get lost in the Jared beauty and grace and kindness, I want to touch base on the little nepo. I want to do a little nepo touch because we've like had conversations about connections in the industry and not having connections in the industry and your background, and you've been privy to that, and like being an assistant, all those things that we've kind of discussed. But I want to get your insight and like how that has affected you in good or bad ways, and kind of nepotism does run rampant, and I've learned to like live with it. It's like whatever, but
Totally.
want to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, nepotism is always going to be there, and there's really nothing wrong with it. I think what we had talked about before, which kind of is synonymous with that, is I grew up in a pretty small town in the Hamptons. First of all, when I tell people I'm from the Hamptons, they're like, "Oh, she's rich. She's fucking rich," and I'm like, "No, I'm like the local boy. I'm not the summer kid." And so going to school and being around a lot of wealth has definitely fucked with my mind a bit, because this is an industry that works for one main reason. That reason is that a bulk of the assistants have, financial support from their families. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But when that's the norm, and when you're expected to go out and socialize and party on, oh, I don't know, $18 an hour in the two most expensive cities in the world, it's really fucking hard, because we're not given expense accounts at a young age, but we need to be out there and we need to be getting drinks and seeing movies and going, doing all the things. And entertainment, the people that are attracted to entertainment are naturally very social people. So it's put me in a really, it's made me have to get very crafty with the ways I spend my money. So just trying to stay relevant, stay social, stay doing all the things I love, but then also maintaining an entertainment salary. It's really hard. You just get crafty. You find ways to, I babysit. You find ways to make more cash to allow for the lifestyle that we want.
I love what you said about that. And to kind of bleed into the last little question that I got for you, that I had to bend over in my little seat.
Bends over backwards.
So the last person on the episode asked you a question not knowing who you were. And so Jack asked you, if you and your boss could switch places, what would you do differently and what would you do the same? This is the question, written beautifully, of course,
Whoa.
of course. This is the question for Miss Kelly.
So that'd be like my department head.
Yes.
Or like
queen.
not like the, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'll start with what I would do the same.
Okay.
What I would do the same is my boss is very good, like you mentioned earlier, about letting people have an identity that are not agents. So some people in certain departments aren't even allowed to have their cameras on. Our assistants always have their cameras on, always are, being pushed to bring ideas, always allowed a floor. I don't think there's any department that I've ever come across in all the agencies I've worked at in which the assistants are treated as closely to agents as ours is. And so I think that hustler, that kind of like that, I don't know, that autonomy that he gives us, and that I would keep. And what would I change? It starts very simply, but I'd probably find a way to do more just department gatherings and social things outside of the office. I think, like, while that just seems like a fun thing that is like, oh, we get to go to drinks on the department's dime, blah, blah, blah. I have had conversations to get me where I am today in my department, all of which have been outside of the office. And I can
1000%.
name one of them. When Jared was getting a new assistant, or he was sharing an assistant, and he was going to get his own. He was becoming an SVP. He was going to get his own. And I caught wind of that at the holiday party. I said, hey, I think you're getting a new assistant soon. Like, you're getting your own. That's sick. And he's like, yeah, I think so. And I said, I want to be considered for that. Like, that's someone that's a position I want to be considered for, even though I was already on a desk. And that was a very tricky thing to navigate. So I would say doing more of those bonding things, that is how you retain employees. That is how you keep people, creating a team. Because it's not, my mom always says, back to mommy, it's not what you're doing, but who you're doing it with. Because your job may suck. You might have a terrible day, terrible, thing go wrong at work. But if you're with someone in your department who you love and nearby, and you're surrounded by people who you feel like lift you up, who feel like you can trust, that's what's going to keep you. It really is.
1000%. So well said. And I feel like my department needs a little bit of that. And I know that's lacking. And I truly feel like that camaraderie outside of work really does bleed into the work environment.
100%.
But what is the question you want to leave with the next guest? I honestly can't remember who it is. So this is just truly giving it to someone.
What is the question I want to ask? What is the movie that you watched at the youngest age that you felt like had an imprint on you, and why? And what imprint did it leave? And did it inspire you to be in entertainment? Something about your first core memory of a movie. Maybe it could be a play too, or a musical, I would say, but some sort of long form work.
I knew that we would have a chit and a chat and a great time together. I knew that our energy would just be infectious. And I hope the people listening and my mom and Kelly's mom, remind me of her name.
Lynn.
Lynn, I know you're listening. Kathleen, I know you're listening. This is to our moms, always and forever.
No, this episode should be dedicated to moms.
This is to our mothers that we love deeply and dearly, and to Jared Thompson and Mark Turner. And with that, we bid you adieu. Kelly, it's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. This has been a true honor.
And my bladder is about to pee my pants right now because I love to pee so bad. Thank you so much. It's been a moment.
Claire.
I'm walking away to pee.
To pee.